So extending growing seasons and putting in cold frames isn't going to help at all if the wildlife eats all your plants. Today on Barely Homesteading, we're going to talk about protecting the garden. So one of the biggest threats to our garden up here in the mountains of Colorado is the local wildlife. We've talked before about our fencing. We've got 8-foot high fencing all the way around our garden. It's welded wire fencing on 4x4 posts in about 8-foot sections. And this fence has done really well at keeping out the larger wildlife, the deer, the elk, and even done a good job at keeping out some of the medium-sized stuff like raccoons. What it hasn't done is kept out the birds. We've lost a lot in previous years to the birds, especially the strawberries and blueberries. But the birds have also eaten other things like peppers and tomatoes. And so this year we need to put a top across the entire garden to keep the birds out. And we're going to talk about that first. So to get a top on our garden area, what we're going to do is we've strung stringers of galvanized steel wire, I believe it's 17 gauge wire, in a crisscross pattern across the top, across the entire garden area. We're now going to be laying poultry netting, chicken wire, on top of this and stapling down the edges. This galvanized wire is done in a crisscross pattern, corner to corner, as opposed to lengthwise and widthwise, to try to provide a little bit more support for the poultry netting as it lays on top of it. And I have interweaved the wire where it made sense so that the low spots on the wire were supported by the high spots and vice versa. Again, just trying to get as much support as possible. Now we've got all of the poultry netting up on the stringers. So the entire garden area now has a top on it to keep the birds out from eating the vegetables, and also the hawks from getting the chickens. We can now let our chickens roam out in the garden area until the plants start coming up and the chickens want to eat the plants. Another one of the defensive measures that we've done is we've added a windsock to the garden. And the windsock is protective because animals don't like the rustling noise that the sock makes when it blows in the breeze. Don't know if it makes it sound like a snake or people walking around, but they definitely do not like the rustling sound. So if you're in a place where you get frequent breezes, windsock may be a good addition to protecting your garden or your chickens, etc. We let the chicks out to roam around the garden for the first time today. So another protective measure that we've added to the garden is this motion sensor light. It's an LED outdoor light that has both a motion sensor and a daylight sensor, so it only comes on at night. And we wanted to have a motion sensor light because if we just had a constant light on, the wild animals would get used to it and would not be afraid of it. But since it comes on in spurts, only when they're near, they don't get used to it. It spooks them and they run off. Another one of our protections is our cat Lori. Lori's turned out to be quite the mouser. About every week we find at least one rodent in her food dish that's been decapitated that she's caught, and if she's catching them, she's keeping them out of the garden. So hopefully these changes, these additions that we've made this year with the top fencing will help keep the garden safe, keep the birds out, and also keep some of the smaller rodents and things out that could climb up over the fencing. I'm also hopeful that this year we'll be able to keep the insect pests down by having this top on. We've had a problem with caterpillars in the past, and I know it's not going to keep all of them out, but hopefully it'll keep the larger moths from being able to get in and lay their eggs. So for Barely Homesteading, this is Lumberjack saying use it up, wear it out, make it do, or do without.